everyone, welcome back to Reading Reddit Stories with Nat. I hope you enjoyed the last one, but this one is going to be so much better. I found some really juicy ones that I'm so excited to share with you today. So let's begin. This first one is absolutely insane, guys. I can't believe this is real. You are not ready. Okay, let's begin. It's entitled, Am I the Asshole for Leaving My Girlfriend Because of a Joke? I, 22 male, and my girlfriend, 21 female, have been dating for about 2 years. She's always been an amazing girlfriend, but whenever we're with people she knows, she becomes a different person. Alright, so this happened on Saturday, my girlfriend's birthday, and like the boyfriend I am, I of course attended the party. At the party, she drank, and I mean drank. She was like 6 wine glasses deep because she was really excited to finally drink. She stood up and tapped her glass to make a toast and said, "This is my special day, my 21st birthday. Thank you everybody, especially my boyfriend who pays for everything, and no matter what I do, he's gonna come crawling back like the person I raised him to be." I was beyond shocked. I was about to explode, but I kept quiet and stood up and left without cussing, without making a scene. I just left. When I was at the door, she yelled, "Oh, come on, we all know you're gonna come crawling back to me." When I got to our apartment, she texted me, "Why would you ruin my party because of a joke, asshole?" I sent her 2 words, "We're done," and instead drove to my parents' house where I slept. I woke up at 11 a.m. with my phone hot as an oven with hundreds of messages from her friends calling me an asshole for doing that. She even tried to call me from a different number, but I still didn't budge. I canceled all of our shared subscriptions and blocked her friends too. Now she's posting about selfish people who only care about themselves, knowing that she was the one who made fun of me in front of her friends. Now I'm getting messages from her family calling me an asshole for getting mad over a joke. Help me out. What should I do? First of all, dude, you are not the asshole. That was absolutely blatant disrespect and humiliation. The person that you are dating should never, and I mean never, make you feel that way no matter what day it is. That truly showed how she thought of you, and she obviously sees you as a doormat and a bank account. Block, delete. Like, this is crazy. Hopefully she learns her lesson to not treat future boyfriends like that. Treat people the way you want to be treated, guys. Like, this is insane. All right, on to the next one. This one is titled, Am I the Asshole for Telling a Guy to Shut Up During a Job Interview? I was interviewing this guy for a very good software engineering position. He passed the first round, and both I and everyone involved in the second round really liked his resume and experience. On paper, he had everything we were looking for, and honestly, this looked like a life-changing opportunity for him. And then he shows up, very serious and not smiling at all. I'm used to that in tech interviews, and I understand it can be an intimidating environment. We did a round of introductions, and he opened the interview by saying, "Let me tell you a little bit about myself." We said, "Okay, go for it." He started talking about his personal and professional background. After about 3 minutes, I jumped in to ask a follow-up question based on something he mentioned. He replied, "I will answer, just give me a moment," and continued talking. A coworker jumped in with another question, and he did the same thing to her. At this point, we were kind of looking at each other, but decided to let him continue and give him the benefit of the doubt. But after more than 5 minutes, I jumped in again with another question. I had to talk over him to do it. He finally paused and answered, but in such a long-winded way that he ended up veering into another topic. My coworker asked another question, and the same thing happened. At this point, I was ready to end the interview. I tried to politely wrap it up several times, but he was unable to read the room, and he just kept talking. I finally raised my voice slightly and said something like, "Thank you very much for sharing your background. In the interest of time, I'd like to ask if you have any questions for us." This is standard protocol and helps us prepare answers for future interviews. He asked a question about the team, and as I was answering, he raised his finger and interrupted to talk more about his background. I let it go. Then he asked another question, which my coworker started to answer, but again, he spoke over her to talk about himself. I tried once more to interrupt politely, but he just kept talking. At that point, I was done. I said, "John, you really have to shut up and listen." He was surprised, as was my coworker, but he finally stopped talking. I continued, "You walked into this room with a 99% chance of getting the job, and now that chance is 0. The only reason is because in less than 15 minutes, you demonstrated that you do not have the capacity to listen at all. So I'm telling you now, you are not getting this job. But if you take anything away from this interview, let it be this. No matter how good you are technically, if you can't listen, you'll never excel in this career. He apologized and said, "Can we start again?" I replied, "You had your chance. Best of luck in your future interviews. Make sure you listen." Looking back, I know I could have handled that differently, and I still feel bad for the guy. Honestly, you are not the asshole. You did this guy a favor. Hopefully in future interviews, he does listen. Listening is like such an important skill, especially in environments like this. If you do not have personable skills, people are not going to want to hire you. People do not want a robot. They want a real person. I understand that in interviews it can be stressful, but this just sounds like the dude needed a wake-up call that he had never gotten before. He will find another job and will hopefully take your advice, even if it was damaging to his ego. I think that you really, really did him a service by telling him this. So, not the asshole. Alrighty, on to the next story. This one is titled, "Am I the asshole for saying my mom's husband isn't my dad and saying I never got to meet my dad?" My dad died when my mom was pregnant with me, 17 female. She told me about him growing up, and we have little traditions we keep to honor him, and she also named me the name he wanted for a daughter. I always spent time with my dad's family in the summer, and they traveled to see me or we traveled to see them when we could. So even though I never got to meet him, I still consider him my dad. When I was 13, she introduced me to James, and they got married when I was 14. To me, James is my mom's husband, but I guess he sees me as his daughter, and he's been hurt for years that I call him James, that I never gave him a dad-like nickname or title. I didn't know about it until we went on vacation last month. My mom and James met this couple, and we had dinner with their family. I was talking with their 2 kids who were pretty close in age to me, and they asked why I called him James, and wasn't he my dad? And I said, he's not my dad, he's just married to my mom. They asked what happened to my dad, and I told them I never got to meet my dad because he died while my mom was pregnant with me. We talked about other things. But then when we got back from the resort, my mom pulled me into the room and asked me why I'd say that stuff at dinner. I asked her what she meant because I had no idea what was going on. She said James's face when I said he wasn't my dad and when I told those kids I never got to meet my dad was heartbreaking. She told me he's been waiting for me to acknowledge him as my dad in my life, and I never do. I told her, he's not though. She said, I might have been 13 when I met him, but it shouldn't stop me from letting him be the dad who gets to be here for everything. She said as much as she misses dad, she'd never want me to deny myself the chance to have one, and I told her I wasn't denying myself of anything. Mom got frustrated and left. Then, after we got back from vacation, Mom and James pulled me into a meeting, and James told me how much he'd love to be more to me than James, and how hurtful it was to be rejected as dad, even to strangers who could have easily been led to believe he was my dad. They said I don't need to always say that he's not or that my dad died. I told him that I was sorry my words hurt his feelings, and my mom said that wasn't a good apology, and it didn't sound like I was sorry I even said those things. I said, no, because James isn't my dad and I never got to meet my dad. Ever since that afternoon, my mom's talked to me about it probably like 5 different times, and James mopes around whenever I'm around. Mom said it really is hurtful to him. So, am I the asshole? Alrighty, you are not the asshole, but I do understand where James is coming from on wanting to be acknowledged as a fatherly figure for you, but honestly, that is for you to decide if you want to call him your dad, and you obviously don't. I think there is also something to be said about the fact that you just met this dude like 4 years ago and he already wants to be called your dad. It's not like he has always been in your life. He has only been there for 4 years of it. You can't expect someone to give you the title when you aren't their biological parent, you haven't adopted them, or haven't been in their life forever. It's kind of insane for him to believe that he is entitled to that when, honestly, he is your mom's boyfriend at the end of the day, and they could break up and he would probably not take care of you anymore if that happened. He is also an extension of your mom, no matter what he does at this point. Also, you not calling him your dad could be part of your grieving process for your dad that you never got to meet. I can imagine that if I never got to meet my dad and only ever heard stories about him with the title dad, like that title would be more significant to me and would be a way to remember him and have him come up in conversation where he otherwise wouldn't because he's not around. You are not the asshole, and I sympathize with James, but it is ultimately your decision, and he cannot force you to call him something that you don't feel like he is. You could maybe call him like stepdad or something. Like maybe that is a healthy compromise to make it so the dad is still in the title, but it's not like just dad, and that can be reserved for your dad. And if someone like asks if James is your dad, you can say like, no, he's my stepdad, and leave it there. Like maybe that would be a good way to handle this, but I understand how it's a sticky situation, but that's just my opinion. All right, this next one is a little bit of a shorter one. This one is titled, Am I the Asshole for Not Wanting to Go to My Friend's Funeral? All right, so a friend of mine died recently, and I don't want to go to the funeral or even be in the neighborhood while it's going on. I'm feeling broken already, and I know that going there would break me completely. I want to mourn him in my own way, and don't want one of my few remaining memories of him to be him in a coffin. I brought this up to another friend, and she's saying that I have to go, and it's the least I can do, but I don't believe that. So tell me if I'm being the asshole. All right, in this situation, I can understand and could fight for both sides of not the asshole or you're the asshole, but in my opinion, because this is from Nat's POV, I think that you are kind of the asshole. I think that it's important, especially in times of grief, to just show up. I can't even imagine how hard it is to lose a child or a sibling, and it's important that at a funeral, a family gets to see how many people cared for their loved one's life. I think that it's important to be a part of the community that helps a family through grief while processing your own. I know that it's hard, but funerals are a thing for a reason. It's to let you know that you are not alone in grief, and others are not alone in grief. I've been a person who just wanted to block off the memories of someone after they die and just remember them as I did, or as someone who I just haven't seen in a while, as if they were still alive. But in a way, that's not healthy, and it's just avoiding grief, which will always come back and hurt you. I think that it is important to attend the funeral, but obviously you don't have to look in the coffin or anything. Just have the space to grieve so it doesn't come back and hurt you in the future, or so that you don't have like regret or guilt from not being there. It's a once in a lifetime thing, and you would want your friends to show up to your funeral, so you should show up to theirs. That's my opinion. All right, this is the last and final story for today. This one is titled, Am I the Asshole for Ignoring His Text After He Called Me Too Much to Handle? I'm 19 female, and I've been casually seeing this guy, 23 male, for about 2 months. We've hung out a few times, lots of late night talks, some flirting, and honestly, pretty strong chemistry. The other night we were texting, and he said something like, You're a lot, maybe too much to handle, with a winky face. I didn't respond because it rubbed me the wrong way. I feel like he was trying to neg me or test how I'd react. Since then, he sent me a couple of messages asking if I'm mad or if I ghosted him already. I haven't replied because I'm not sure if I'm overreacting or if that was kind of disrespectful. My best friend thinks I'm being dramatic and should just laugh it off, but part of me feels like he thinks I'm being too much. Maybe he shouldn't have me around at all. So, am I the asshole for ignoring him after that comment? Girl, I don't say this a lot around like my girlfriends or anything like that, but you're overreacting. Like, I think that you're kind of the asshole here. This comment sounds like it was meant to be flirty, and especially if you guys are just getting to know each other, he probably wouldn't say that and mean it in a bad way. I think that he was just flirting because of the winky face, and girl, I think you took it too literally. Alrighty, that is the end of this story time for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this. It was so fun to read these stories and to give my own opinions on them. Please leave in the comments if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, and please leave a like if you liked this video. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!